In the early 2000s, BMW set out to win over a new generation of buyers by building a small, accessible car that refused to compromise on the brand's signature driving DNA. But behind the marketing, a single engineering decision, the insistence on rear-wheel drive, baked extra weight, cost, and complexity into every 1 Series that rolled off the line. With 1 billion euros in cost overruns, thin profit margins, and internal reports warning of cannibalized sales, the very car meant to grow BMW's empire became an expensive contradiction. How did a project designed to open doors end up threatening the foundation? The numbers and the fallout tell a story few buyers ever hear. By 2003, the compact premium segment in Europe was exploding, growing more than 30% in just 2 years to over 627,000 cars sold. BMW's boardroom was tracking every percentage point. Their own sales were barely moving, up just 1.6%, while Audi and Mercedes were pulling ahead with new entries like the A3 and the A-Class. Internal strategy memos from Munich spelled out the urgency. If BMW wanted to stay relevant, they needed to win over younger buyers, many of whom had never owned a premium badge before. The plan was not just about moving metal. It was about lowering the average buyer age from 45 to the low 30s, capturing a bigger share of women buyers, and convincing 70% of these newcomers to upgrade to a 3 Series within 3 years. The commercial targets were ambitious. 100,000 1 Series were to be sold in the first full year, with a conquest rate that would bring in tens of thousands of new faces to BMW showrooms. Executives saw the entry segment as a high potential funnel, not a profit center. The logic was simple: get them hooked on the BMW experience early, and the brand's higher margin models would reap the rewards for years to come. With the segment booming and rivals closing in, BMW's leadership saw no time for half measures. They approved a bold engineering direction, determined to build a compact car that still felt like a true BMW, even if it meant taking on risks and costs that the company had never faced in this part of the market. BMW's engineers faced a dilemma that would define the 1 Series from its first sketches: how to deliver the signature rear-wheel drive handling in a car barely 4 meters long. Most rivals in the compact segment, like the Audi A3 and Mercedes A-Class, chose front-wheel drive and transverse engines, which allowed for shorter bodies, more rear seat space, and lower production costs. BMW, determined not to compromise its driving reputation, insisted on a longitudinal engine layout and a full rear-wheel drive platform, just like its larger models. This decision came with immediate, measurable trade-offs. The 1 Series needed a prominent transmission tunnel running the length of the cabin, cutting into rear legroom and forcing the car to stretch to 4.23 meters, longer than many competitors. The rear-wheel drive hardware also added 45 to 70 kilograms of extra mass compared to a front-drive Golf, which meant higher fuel consumption and carbon dioxide emissions, with official figures ranging from 150 to 181 grams per kilometer. A former BMW chassis engineer later recalled the internal debates. "We knew we were giving up packaging and efficiency, but the board wanted a real BMW at any cost. That cost was more than theoretical. The heavier, more complex platform made it impossible for the 1 Series to match rivals on weight, space, or emissions, factors that mattered deeply in a segment where every gram and millimeter counted. These physical penalties were not just quirks of design. They were the foundation for a cascade of cost and margin challenges that would haunt the program for years." On the factory floor in Leipzig, the reality of BMW's engineering ambitions took shape in steel and euros. The 1 Series demanded bespoke tooling for its rear-wheel drive chassis, a setup no rival in the segment attempted. Every unique part, from the rear subframe to the transmission housing, came with its own specialized supply chain, driving up costs at every turn. Internal audit minutes from 2005 revealed a staggering 1.1 billion euros cost overrun on the program, a figure that shocked even seasoned executives. The original development budget of 2 billion euros had already been stretched, but the relentless pursuit of BMW's driving DNA pushed the final tally to over 3 billion euros. Suppliers felt the strain too. A senior program manager at ZF Group, responsible for the 1 Series 6-speed manual, later described the impact. The clutch housing was unique. We couldn't share it with any other BMW. That meant a 30% increase in part cost just for that one component. Across the board, low-volume runs and bespoke assemblies made it impossible to achieve the economies of scale seen in front-drive rivals. For BMW, every decision to preserve brand character was paid for in hard currency, not just engineering pride. The numbers left little doubt. What made the 1 Series special on paper also made it a financial outlier, setting up a revenue squeeze that would haunt the project for years. In BMW showrooms across Europe, a strange pattern began to surface. Buyers comparing the 1 Series with its siblings often found themselves staring at price sheets that blurred the lines between entry-level and established models. The top trim 120D, for example, landed just 4,000 euros shy of a base 3 Series sedan, while offering noticeably less rear legroom and a tighter cabin. For many, the pitch of a premium compact started to sound like a downgrade at nearly the same price. Dealers noticed the confusion early. Memos circulated warning that the 1 Series risked cannibalizing sales from the more profitable 3 Series and even the 2 Series coupe. One general manager summed up the mood, saying they were selling a less practical car to the same customer for a smaller margin. Owner surveys only deepened the headache. The 1 Series scored an average of 3.2 out of 5 on perceived quality, well below the 3 Series benchmark. The result was a perception gap that left first-time buyers questioning the value of their new badge, and longtime customers wondering if BMW's entry-level gamble had come at the expense of the brand's reputation. On paper, the 1 Series delivered the volume BMW had hoped for, peaking at 187,691 units sold in 2008. But the balance sheet told a different story. The contribution margin for the 1 Series hovered around 7%, barely half of what the 3 Series achieved in the same years. Analysts who reviewed BMW's annual reports noted that, even at its sales peak, the program's thin margins could not come close to offsetting the upfront investment. The final ledger was sobering. After 8 years, total development and manufacturing costs for the first-generation 1 Series reached 3.1 billion euros, while cumulative profit contribution was estimated at just 200 million euros. That left BMW staring at a negative return on investment of 85%. As one industry analyst put it, BMW spent billions to defend its brand values in a segment where the math simply did not work. The numbers forced a reckoning inside Munich's boardroom, with the financial shortfall impossible to ignore, and questions mounting about how to prevent a repeat. BMW's product planners did not wait long to apply the lessons from the first 1 Series. By 2014, the company launched the UKL platform, a front-wheel drive architecture built to be shared across Mini and BMW's own entry-level lineup. This shift allowed 7 models to use the same basic underpinnings, slashing development costs to just 700 million euros for the F40 generation, less than a quarter of the original program's bill. The new approach paid off immediately. The F40 1 Series earned a 12% contribution margin in its first year, nearly double what the old rear-drive model could achieve. By moving to a modular, transverse layout, BMW finally broke the cycle of bespoke engineering and low-volume penalties that had haunted its first compact gamble. The numbers told a clear story. Platform sharing, not purity, was now the path to sustainable profit. A decade after BMW's original 1 Series gamble, the economics of building a premium entry-level car have only grown more unforgiving. Today, the fixed cost to develop a compliant premium hatchback, before a single car rolls off the line, hovers near 15,000 euros per unit due to mandatory advanced driver assistance systems, advanced safety cells, and electrification requirements. These costs do not shrink for small volume bespoke projects. They demand scale across hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of vehicles to make sense. Even giants like Mercedes and Audi now rely on modular platforms that stretch from hatchbacks to sport utility vehicles, sharing components and software to keep per-car costs in check. For any brand still tempted by a unique platform or rear-wheel drive purity, the financial risk is steeper than ever. The pressure to achieve mega scale is not just about profit. It is about survival in a market where the cost floor keeps rising and the room for costly experiments is vanishing. Today, premium brands walk a razor's edge, balancing authenticity against ever-rising development costs. As electrification, regulation, and platform sharing reshape the industry, the question of how accessible a badge can become is more urgent than ever. Where would you draw the line? Let's hear your take below.